Welcome to the Weekend Sports Cars, part of the Marshall Pruett podcast collection, and brought to you as always with the assistance of our good friends, Justice Brothers and TorontoMotorsports.com. I'm Graham Goodwin, editor of dailysportscar.com in the UK, and with me is my deputy and also Racer.com's WC correspondent, Stephen Kilbey. We're here at DSC HQ in the UK on Friday evening, about an hour later than we expected to be, having just recorded an hour's podcast and then realised it didn't record. So if this does sound a little bit like we're in deja vu, there's a reason for that. Let's kick it off really quickly. Two enormous stories here, Stephen.
How are you, Graham?
Oh, stop. Significantly more bored than I was an hour ago. Two enormous stories. Got to get into those straight away. Our listeners expect us to discuss them. So let's hit those two balls against this wall here. Or odd metaphor. First, what a win at the weekend for Nick Tandy in the Mini Challenge on the BTCC platform. A guest appearance for the Mr. 24 Porsche factory driver, and back to his roots, mini stocks and mini sevens before he went on his single-seater career for Nick. Great stuff from him. The other debut coming this weekend for the Ginetta GT2 car.
Fabulous.
Great stuff. Great to see that they're trying to prop up what has been a struggling formula, joining SRO's GT Academy to try to find new talent through that route as well. So good luck to them this weekend. It's father and son combo. Lawrence and Freddie Tomlinson will give the car its debut, and we'll see how that one comes out. That's the slight joking aside. It has been an absolutely packed week for news. One of the busiest we've had. IMSA. It is Petit Le Mans weekend. We're recording, as I say, on Friday evening, but you're likely to hear this after the Petit Le Mans race has been run, because Marshall Pruett will be busy and he produces this show for us. But what we can tell you is all sorts of goodness coming out of the State of the Series with John Doonan yesterday at Road Atlanta, including news of a lengthy extension for the contract with Michelin and IMSA through to 2035, which puts you into your 40s and me into my 70s, which is horrifying. And also the entry lists for the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, Michelin Endurance Cup, and all sorts of storylines about cars that are coming, cars that aren't, and generally, actually no, better than generally, absolutely a healthy picture for the championship, albeit with some sad stories along the way.
Yeah. How do you want to do this, Graham? Do you want to go through the entry list?
Let's talk about the numbers overall, and then we can have a quick skip through each of the classes.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a packed grid again for both Endurance Cup and WeatherTech. We've got 45 full season entries, 54 for the Endurance Cup, and expected to be north of 60 cars for the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona in January. GTP, 11 cars, and plenty of little storylines to look through in that. BMW Team WRT listed, RLL no longer there running the programme, so first time seeing their name on an entry list.
But we'll hear a little bit more about RLL in a moment.
Yep. We've got the full season for the Aston Martin Valkyrie, so that will make its Rolex 24 at Daytona debut after the team set out the opener this year. We've got a JDC Miller Motorsports Porsche 963, the only privateer 963 listed, nothing from Proton at this point. And then looking further afield, same programme for Cadillac, 3 cars, 2 of them Wayne Taylor, 1 Action Express. And then Acura with Meyer Shank bringing 2 ARX 06s and rounding it all out 2 Penske Porsche 963s, and that's pretty relevant and poignant. We'll come on to that a bit later. The only other omission to note is that we don't have the Lamborghini anywhere. That has obviously been wound down, that SC63 programme.
And there is a knock-on effect too for their service with Ryder Riley, which we'll get to when we come to GTD. Pretty good. I mean, it's 11 cars for the full season.
Yep.
That's a decent enough grid, I think. I mean, would have been years where we've been dreaming of 11 cars.
Only 5 factories represented.
Awful.
Terrible.
Dear me, the sky is literally falling. Dear me, says the internet. So that's GTP. LMP2, equally healthy.
Yep, equally healthy. 12 full-season cars from 11 teams. The two-car team is United Autosports USA, and there's a few interesting names in there. Team Tonis, which made a debut earlier this season, Road America, is in for the full season next year. We've got Brian Herter Autosport with their tie-up with PR1 Matheson. And we've got Intersport back, John Field's team, that's fully confirmed and listed as well, alongside a kind of travelling band of regular teams like the likes of Pratt Miller, AO, Inter Europol, CrowdStrike by APR, Tower, TDS and ERA. So a really nice LMP2 field there.
No AF Corsa this year in America.
No AF Corsa in America. GTD Pro, 8 cars, looking really strong as well. Some nice smattering of Endurance Cup cars for that category. The headlines are away from the traditional factories like Corvette with 2 cars, Ford with 2 cars. It's nice to see FAF back with Lamborghini in their single car effort with the what will be the Temerario.
Eventually, I think they'll start the season with the Huracan.
Vassar Sullivan with what we expect to be, at least at the start, with RCF.
I suspect a significant period of 2026 will be the RCF.
And AO back with Rexy, looking great there with that fan favourite.
Rexy.
Yeah, and Evo Rexy.
Rexy will have evolved.
Then we come to Paul Miller. Now, these entry lists don't have brands listed to them. Or cars, so the assumption would be BMW at this point, Graham?
Well, you may no. So there's all sorts of shenanigans here. This is the right moment to talk about the fact that this may well not be the complete list for GTD Pro. There are at least 2 other teams in the mix, one of which is Random Vandals, who are working hard to put together a GTD Pro BMW effort, we know. The other is RLL. RLL trying to get to GTD Pro. If not, they've made it clear that LMP2 holds some appeal. Manufacturer unknown, as at the moment it is for Paul Miller. As you said, it's 1 car, not 2 this season. We know there were approaches to Paul Miller from Lamborghini, where of course they've raced before, and McLaren. So there is a bit of watch this space there around the Paul Miller Racing squad.
Notable, it's only 1 car this year.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of background storylines to do with the squad and long-term future there. And I wish everybody involved well, family and the team, all sorts of challenges going on at Paul Miller Racing in the background that are yet to work themselves through.
So that leaves us with the additional cars for the Endurance Cup, and it's a nice set, really, of 4 cars. One from Triassi Competizione.
That'd be a Ferrari.
And Risi Competizione back under their own
Probably
name.
Ferrari-ish, I think.
Yeah, I would imagine that's going to be a Ferrari. They've been the technical partner to the really hyper-successful Dragon Speed effort this year in GTD Pro.
And so Dragon Speed may, well, they revert to GTD and may well do so as GTD Pro champions,
which is fantastic season for them. But it would be a delight, I'm sure, for many fans to see the Rizzi name at all the big races next year. 75 Express, that's Kenny Harball's team.
Well, that's an interesting one because as we record today, Will Power just announced as joining that team for the Indy 8 Hours. Might that be a precursor to Will finally making what would be a delayed debut at the Rolex 24? I had to pull out for background reasons. Was it last year or the year before? But let's hope he makes it to the Rolex 24.
Yeah, it'd be very nice. And then we round that class off with a Grello Porsche from Manthey. A really lovely bit of news from Manthey that kind of came as a nice little surprise during a very strange week for the Porsche concern. But we've got a Grello car which will no doubt be driven by some astonishing talent and will look fabulous at some of these races when we race into the night. Fantastic news there. And it's just a really strong GTD Pro class. I'm sure the racing is going to be brilliant. So that brings us on to GTD, which is a 14-car full-season grid. It's the biggest full-season field in the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. They will be joined by 5 additional cars from the Michelin Endurance Cup. And
let's go through some headlines for that. So let's talk about the cars that aren't there. 4 teams that raced full season, so at least in Michelin Endurance Cup, not returning. And they are Forte, and they're Lamborghini.
Magnus Racing.
Magnus Racing was the one I was searching for. I was coming up with the name Potter. Couldn't come up with the word John, but Harry. I knew it wasn't Harry. I knew it wasn't Brian. But 2 more teams that are not going to be back in that regard are...
It's going to be Cheselar and Court Competition.
So Cheselar, we know, are listed in LMP2 for the Asia Le Mans Series this winter. We'll wait and see what it is that the Lecorte family will tell us are their plans to race on. I think at the end of their plans sojourn in IMSA, that was always around the Lecorte business, Cheselar, and their launch into the US marketplace. Court Competition, meanwhile, it's been a tough year for them, and that looks like it's ending messily and legally in the background. That team at the moment parked.
So that rounds it off, really. We've got a band of you kind of GTD regulars, likes of Heart of Racing are in there.
Well, we should mention welcome to GTD to Riley, because they're returning to the Ford and Mustang families. Something that Bill and Bob, his esteemed and much lamented father, were a big part of the Blue Oval's history. Bob Riley, the designer of the epic and brutal Ford Mustang GTP of 1983, I seem to remember, and the livery of the car actually harking back to a IMSA GTO championship winning Mustang from 1985.
Fantastic. RS1, so a name to welcome.
That's a team coming up through the order in the
challenge.
Yes, absolutely. So it's good to show that IMSA's ladder is working too.
And a bit of housekeeping in that there is a number 13 car listed for 13 Motorsports, which let's believe is AWA.
It is indeed.
So it's a change of name for AWA. So Corvette on the grid, we assume, and then through DXDT Racing.
Well, it's a weird one, isn't it? So DXDT effectively did the full season, but with two completely different crews. But what we should see is Robert Wickens stepping up to a full season with them,
which would be fabulous. Wouldn't that be cool to see him at Rolex?
Yes, it would.
Please make it happen. So yeah, fantastic list, and that brings us on to kind of, I guess, some of the other bits of news that came out of the state of the series. You trailed that Michelin will be supplying tyres until we are pretty much dead and buried, by the sounds of it, through 2035.
I think you'll last beyond 41, mate.
I don't know, the way it's going.
71 for me, we'll wait and see.
So yeah, great news for the French constructor. We know how keen they are and how supportive they are of IMSA and its platform and sports car racing in general, working on new tyres for 2026. And we know they're already pushing ahead with plans for producing additional compounds that take things even further in sustainability terms into the next decade. That's great to see that. And a nice little nugget at the bottom of the original press release that came out is that Win the Weekend, the documentary series, is coming back next year, renewed for another season, supported by Michelin again. That's a nice little bit of news, because that's been really popular and a really good way of showcasing what we do.
It's got to be said, hasn't it? The major championships we cover, IMSA and ACO, and for that matter SRO, working really hard on engaging with what is a rapidly growing audience. And notice, by the way, IMSA's YouTube channel passed 1 million subscribers.
Just awesome work there.
Yep.
Like, this is the time, isn't it? And they are striking. So yeah, great news for Michelin and some stability. And as a whole, teams are universally pretty positive about the service and the product that they provide. So no, it's great news for IMSA and all concerned there. John Doonan did his usual after the conference, had some time for journalists. A few interesting things to say. Principally, I think it's got to be said. I mean, he mentioned about full season entry lists maybe not being done, and they're sort of teasing some announcements potentially to come from other teams.
Well, we think Brandon Vandals will be there.
Yeah.
We think with the BMW. RLL clearly working hard to be back on the grid, and that would be very much welcomed by everybody. There'll be a capacity grid at Daytona, which at the moment is still 61 cars.
Crushingly disappointing 61
Crushingly
cars.
disappointing 61.
Awful.
But, it's a great time to be an international sports car race organiser. And it's a great time to be one of those people watching or reporting on this one. Probably less easy if you're trying to get squeezed into one of those grids. And we keep hearing stories of the number of cars that have been turned away for just about every championship. The latest I've heard with IMSA is they've turned away 4 Daytona, or they will turn away from Daytona, something approaching 20 cars again, which is absolutely astounding.
It really doesn't feel like that long ago. We were struggling to get to 30.
Yep.
It's just staggering.
Just nuts.
We shouldn't take it for granted.
We absolutely shouldn't.
The other thing that John talked about with our colleague RJ O'Connell is the future for convergence. He was very, very optimistic and open in talking about his hopes for a single platform and the potential for it to happen.
Well, there's a great quote, wasn't there, about dinner in Paris?
Yeah, so he said, I had an opportunity to be in France a month ago with teammates and 13 OEMs in the room. I joked that a few years ago we could have got a table for 4 in the restaurant. But now we have a full boardroom at a hotel talking about the future. I left there very excited and confident that convergence will continue, with the hope of one set of regulations down the road, perhaps in the 2030 timeframe. Now, we've already spoken about single platform a couple of episodes ago at reasonable length about moving to something that isn't LMH and LMDH. It's something that probably is going to resemble LMDH, but with a little bit more technical freedom, just to simplify things and make it easier, one, to balance the cars with BOP across the board, and also to make sure that the cost of racing remains feasible for a lot of these manufacturers. So it's great to see sensible conversations. It's great to see how aligned everyone is on these topics, which, when you think of how many different players there are and how many different manufacturers, all with different sets of priorities, are in the room, it's amazing that they're all so far in advance coming together, and it sounds like breeding positivity about the future and getting stuck in. I love to hear it.
Well, for me, there's a parallel here to a bit of geopolitics. Parallel is this. If you were to just believe everything you read on the internet, you'd think that everybody in this sport is at each other's throats on a week-by-week basis, arguing about principally balance of performance, but a little bit about kind of future technologies, etc. It's not like that. You know, what we've got, a very large proportion of the audience here being incredibly mature about the challenges that they've got in drawing these programs together and maintaining these programs. Incredibly mature about recognition of the real world difficulties that the automotive industry has got moving forward. More on that, listeners, as you might well imagine, in the coming minutes. And incredibly sensible about doing something that, as the human race, we appear to be losing the talent to do. And that is debate and compromise, not argue. What's impressed me is the quality of discourse that is happening in the background is being maintained despite those challenges, and despite the fact that there are hard truths to be sorted out and real bills to be paid. And that, I think, is what John is implying. I think he's right. You know, I'm sure, like every room with 13 or 14 people in, there's the odd dissenting voice, but generally speaking, what we've got is actually a debate, not an argument. There are going to be rocks on that road for sure, but I'm highly confident that, short of factors outside of their control, that community has proven themselves capable of coming up with good answers.
So that's that. We've got a handful of other bits of housekeeping, if you will, in terms of smaller bits of news. So I think there's 2 major bits of news from this week. Let's leave them till last. Let's rattle through what we've got here. We've seen and heard a bit more about Toyota and their future in the sport in 2 ways. So we've heard about the hydrogen side of things with Mission H24, and we spoke about that a little bit post Fuji. There's a longer form piece on the route to the hydrogen regulations, which has since been published since we last recorded. So worth having a look at that, about Toyota's ambition and the ACO's ambition for hydrogen as a technology and what that might look like in practice in terms of getting a class together, getting cars together, and how you might go about eventually balancing them with hypercars once we get into the next decade. Yep. The other part of this is the current car that Toyota operates in hypercar, the GR010, which is sporting a new look.
Right, so first things first, we believe Monday, we're recording and say this on Friday evening, UK time, by Monday, we should see potentially 3 new Toyota race cars that are relevant to our audience on the Weekend Sports Cars. One of them is the new GT500 car, Super GT. One of them we expect to be the final iteration of the long-delayed GT3 replacement of the RCF, and one of them is absolutely a very significantly revamped, in aero terms at least, the GR010 hypercar, still the most successful hypercar of the current era. It's disappointing not to be able to tell you more than that. And why am I using those terms in a guarded fashion? Well, you and I are pretty much just about now, a week and a half after returning from Tokyo, over our jet lag. We together
Still not well.
Still not well,
fully.
No. But we, together with the rest of our colleagues, cohorts, call them what you will, the rambling band of international sports car journalists, made our way over to Japan for what was an epic weekend of racing in the FI World Endurance Championship.
What a race.
Absolutely. And we took part in, you mentioned the hydrogen announcements that were made there. You were there at that press conference, well attended by our colleagues. The Meet the Teams opportunities with the team management drivers, engineering staff from Toyota. We're willing participants in them, despite the fact that it's, at time, been tough to hear what's been a season of pretty rampant negativity from senior management at Toyota. What we weren't told, and what we didn't discover until we returned midweek, was that there was another opportunity, but it wasn't offered to the international media. It was done behind closed doors with Japanese media only, where they were told and permitted to publish that a brand new version of the hypercar was coming. That's, I'll say it out loud, disappointing, and Toyota, if you're listening, that's damn rude. That's not acceptable behaviour. You know, we are, or I've always tried to be, to encapsulate the best possible iteration of their aspirations to their programs since they started back in 2012. And
didn't even brief the WC media team.
Well, you know, disappointed that's what was their choice. I'm guessing they felt they had to prop up what I'm sure has been negativity about their performance and probably what they expected to be a negative performance at Fuji. But I've been a PR man my entire professional life before I left that world 10 years ago to do what I now do, which is to explain sports car racing through the written word and through my and my colleagues' voices on air and in these kind of podcasts to what we hope is a growing global, growing global audience. I'm not able to do that in this instance because Toyota haven't told me, but they've chosen to tell other people. That's really disappointing. And I'm sorry to say that we're taking time on this podcast to register that disappointment, but that's the way I feel about it. If I'm the wrong side of a door where the biggest news of that weekend is being given to other people, and I've flown for 15 hours to get there, then I'm here to tell you, sorry Toyota, you've blown it there, and I think you need to apologise.
Yeah, hopefully they do. Hopefully they do.
So if you're wondering why we aren't going into any great lengths to pay for spy photography or tell the story as to what's going on behind closed doors. Number one, we're being polite and we're waiting for what they're going to tell us. Number two is
they clearly don't want us to talk about it.
Well, I'm not going to waste my time doing that while there's other more important things to do right now. Sorry, Toyota.
So
anyway, see you in Bahrain.
Yeah. Anyway, in better news, it was a great weekend at Hockenheim for DTM and ADAC GT Masters for two reasons.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's talk about Unschöngoven and what was a spectacular end to the DTM season. If you're not a fan of full contact racing, look away now. But last couple of laps of that race and that season, epic stuff. Absolutely DTM on brand, and congratulations to Unschön that he's there now as a DTM champion. That's a big moment in his career, big for Porsche as well. Remember, they don't have a fantastic heritage in DTM. They've only really come into it in the GT3 era, and they come away with another champion.
Yeah, no, fantastic, really awesome racing. And on the bill for DTM was ADAC GT Masters, and we saw a first global championship win for the Mustang GT3 platform with Haupt Racing Team. A significant milestone for that programme.
You know what? After the early days and months of that programme when it looked, oh my God, it looked desperately poor. They get their head around it, and we're getting used in the FI World Endurance Championship to seeing those cars running at the front.
Yeah, and more to come with an Evo kit that's coming next year. And speaking to Haupt Racing actually after their championship win to kind of get some feedback on what their year's been like with Ford and what's to come with them. Very clear, they are fully committed to racing with Ford. They're really impressed by the service that Ford has provided. They're impressed with the car considering how young it is, and they're fully confident that it's only going to get better, and specifically in sprint racing with this Evo kit that's coming next year, which we look forward to hearing more about very soon. So, yeah.
So that's that lot. Is that everything apart from our big two?
One more thing.
Go for it.
Rookie test.
Oh, yeah.
Two British youngsters getting a massive opportunity.
Well, look, two very talented kids, in my terms, because I'm nearly 70 apparently.
By Michelin's terms, yeah.
By Michelin's terms, they measure their commitment in decades. So do I. Stop it. So Tom Fleming, who I first encountered taking the win at Finale Mondiali in Ferrari Challenge. Spectacular racing, spectacular talent, and he's been racing this year in GT3 with GR Racing, LMGT3 GR Racing, and in the Michelin Le Mans Cup in the Ades, which is something more of a challenge for him. But he's got the LMGT3 rookie test at Bahrain, and it's another Brit. I don't think that's ever happened before for the WC rookies, and I'm delighted to say it's something that we've been talking about on the show all year, Ollie Gray from VDS Panis Racing, and I think that's absolutely deserved on the back of the performances he's shown all year, but for me particularly coming into and through and beyond what we saw at the Le Mans 24 Hours.
Yeah, it's good when you're watching youngsters with the talent levels that both Ollie and Tom have, and then you see them handed an opportunity like this at like an end of a season, which for both of them has been fantastic. It's a nice bit of validation because we've been watching them all year, really impressed by them, and particularly Ollie Gray. The turnaround, like the jump he has made this year since he's moved to VDS Panis Racing has been staggering to watch. And you're just so pleased for them because it's real opportunities, and it's real for them. It's a mark of how well they're doing on and off the track.
And a nice kid.
Yeah, they're both fantastic.
Yeah.
You know.
So there you go. There'll be more storylines to come and a much wider entry list for
the rookie test.
The rookie test in due course. We've actually got the LMS rookie test before that in Portimao. We're going to be there next week, and lots of storylines to come from there. Trust me, including a couple of epic ones we're working on. We then move into what for me was perhaps an unexpected story this week. We know it's going on in the background, but it emerged through a slightly unconventional means, and that is effective confirmation of significant changes to come in what's been the most commented upon part of the FI World Endurance Championship all season.
Yes, so this is the news that the BOP system for 2026 will take a more simplified form. So the ACO President Pierre Fillon spoke to a French outlet, Endurance 24, and all credit to Florian, who wrote that story. He's a lovely guy, and it's a really nice piece for him to put up. Nice piece from him on Fillon's take on it. He didn't mince his words, did he?
No, he didn't. I mean,
about this year and the challenges that BOP has faced.
I think what it reflects is they've tried to be ambitious in creating as many cul-de-sacs as possible for teams to second-guess the process. And the problem, which I think is acknowledged by the ACO president, Pierre Fillon, is that whilst it may be a strong process, it's made weaker because we've got such a short season. So if you're relying on results from 3 races, or the best, or 2 taken from 3 as it eventually emerged, and effectively that is a process that is rolling out over 7 races because Le Mans isn't part of the same process. Any mistake you make, any needle moving further than perhaps it should, the ripples go deeply into that season. And I think what he's acknowledging is that it needs to be simpler. And the other thing I hope he's acknowledging, and I believe he is they need to be a lot more transparent about it. Because what they've lost here is they've lost the confidence of the public. And I think they need to think very carefully about why that's the case. Some of it has been the outlook and attitude of people involved directly at the coalface within the teams of the manufacturers, no doubt about that. Some of it has been the likes of you and I and our friends and colleagues in the press room. And some of it is the fact that, how can I put this? Assumed knowledge has got out of control. There are a lot of people commenting on this in wildly speculative ways that bears no scrutiny at all. And yet what you've got now are people who are saying, well, it's fixing the races, it's this, it's that, this team, this manufacturer had no chance. As we'll get on to in just a moment, Porsche, look at them, they were champions last year and they're absolutely nowhere this year. Porsche are in the hunt for the Manufacturers and Drivers' World Championship with one race to go.
And we're on the lead lap and almost won Le Mans.
Absolutely. Has it been perfect? No, it has not. I don't think you can ever make a system perfect. Could it be better? My guess is it probably could be. And the good news is that they're talking about doing exactly that. Has this been a failure of epic proportions? Yes, but not in the way that people are implying. Yes, it's been a failure of epic proportions to manage the message. That's it. Okay? Ultimately, we play a game in motorsport of the best team, and in some cases the best car, should win. And generally speaking, in the early part of this season, that's pretty much exactly what happened. And what people have ignored throughout this season, to their cost, because actually this is the beauty of the formula, are the other factors that have come into play. And here we can look at what happened to Cadillac and Qatar when, frankly, they should have won and ended up with two cars contacting each other. You can look at the failures we've seen this year from Toyota, where a lot of their problems have been caused from within. Stand up and be counted the absolutely epic failure at Fuji to serve the second stop after pitting for emergency service that completely counted out one of their cars right at the start of the race, right at the beginning of the race. Absolutely nothing to do with anybody other than Toyota failing to read the rule book properly or failing to act upon the rule book properly. I welcome the fact they're taking another look. I welcome the fact that what's being signalled by Pierre is something that will be simpler, and I would push the point heavily right now that we want to push that simpler to implement and simpler to explain and communicate, because that part, it's not been forgotten. There have been some brave attempts to try, but I think we need open discussion about how it is you solve the problem of either genuine misunderstanding or misinformation.
Yeah, it's the difference between WC and IMSA on that point is so massive, because the discourse surrounding how IMSA's done on BOP.
How many times you've read the story? IMSA's done a brilliant job on BOP. Here's the thing: no, they damn well haven't.
But the difference is
No,
they've
they haven't.
come out and been more clear about it, and actually, I think that has worked totally in their favour. They've been more transparent.
I agree, and I will put it this way: I'm not going to tell you who it was, but it was someone extremely senior within the IMSA community. My phone rang one evening, middle of this season, and the conversation at the other end was, "You're going to get a note. It's about a change in BOP." This was at the point at which Porsche had won. Was it 1-2 in all four races?
Something like that.
It was close to it, wasn't it?
But they swept the start of the season, didn't they? Yeah.
And when a little bit of gentle probing went in, the answer was, we messed up. Okay? Acknowledging the mistake, made a sea change in their BOP. I think in the climate that we've been working with, had that happened in the WC, they'd have been crucified. Crucified publicly for it.
But maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they get a different response from people if, rather than just staying quiet all year and just rolling with the changes and implementing tweaks to the system without really communicating them.
I think it would have been helpful to find perhaps a more populist way of communicating why some selected changes were made, instead of us getting to the stage where by the way, this year's most boring internet meme, let's give Tota 20 kilos. So bored with it. Let's give Tota, wheel nuts that actually hang on the car. Let's give Tota a strategist that remembers what the rule book says. Let's do those things, because that could have saved them some significant, racing opportunities this season. I'm sort of done with lazy criticism. I agree that things should be criticised when they're not right, but the laziness of some of the commentary about it, the laziness of, pretty much every negative story that has gone the way of anybody in hypercar this season, people have found a way to blame it on balance of performance. It's bullshit. It's bullshit.
The biggest telling point on this in recent weeks is that meeting in Paris.
Yes.
Where all the manufacturers were given a vote on whether to scrap BOP, and all of them except for one voted to keep BOP.
Yeah.
That tells you all you need to know. It's not like half of them have gone, we haven't won anything for months, or we feel like we've been absolutely destroyed all year.
If it's a problem, it's a problem they believe that can be solved. This is the point.
Yes.
And I think here's the other message, and this message goes to our race organisers, rule makers, etc. Please, please, please listen to the guys that you're trying to second guess. Please involve them in the process if you're not doing that to this stage, because if you can get them to come forward with this process with confidence, we're going to be in a much better place.
Yeah. So that leaves us to
the big story.
The big story.
Porsche. Yeah. Let's start with what has happened. It's not a massive surprise. It is a huge disappointment. Okay. So we've known for a while that the pretty parlous state of current and projected finances for Porsche on their core business has caused them significant financial strain. In fact, oddly enough, the very first signs of this were when we were being told, beginning of this year, that the budgets that Porsche has been funding, a few of our colleagues going to quite a large number of the races, was going from a significant number to zero. So that was start of the year. Those ripples continued, and we've seen, media reports of restructure, reprioritisation of the way in which Porsche's workforce is composed. And let's put it into real terms, they're losing 3,900 jobs over the next half a decade. That is a real world tragedy for those people and those families. And put that into context, that's, by my reckoning, close to 9.5% of their 42,000 current workforce. And across the Volkswagen Group, it's vastly more than that. Tens of thousands of people. Why? Several reasons, but here's three of the major ones. Porsche's electrification policy has failed. Okay? It's not been as big a take-up as they expected, and their dash towards wholesale electrification has proven to be the wrong move. The Chinese marketplace for them has stalled, and there's all sorts of reasons for that. One is going to be things like exchange rates and tariffs and blah, blah, blah. Another is the fact that, to be blunt, I think what surprised Porsche is that you've got a number of Chinese manufacturers now operating at the cutting edge level of technology and performance and luxury, and some of the Chinese buyers are buying home brands and not Porsche. Third, and it's an emerging crisis because this one speaks to the decisions that have been made, that have been communicated this week, is the international trade battle at the moment based on Donald Trump's policy of tariffs. Okay, so I've seen a couple of people say, yeah, but sales are up in the States. Sales are up in the States because they're anticipating the impact of tariffs. They're anticipating the fact that prices will go up. And unfortunately, within that, the Porsche dealers and importers in the United States have been putting in a price protection policy that is going to cost them. So what they're sitting on at the moment is a bit of a bubble where there is very likely to be a massive downturn in revenues in the United States as well. So let's be clear about what's happened. What stays is the Formula E programme, and that's understood to be significantly cheaper at this stage at least than either an IMSA programme or a WC programme. IMSA stays, and we'll explain why in a moment. WC and the hypercar programme goes. So where do you want to deal with the questions here? And I think a Q&A on this would be a good way to do it. Why Formula E? What Porsche say is that gives us something that is a key message of ours, which is the 3 powertrain platforms that we have within the range. Internal combustion, GT, hybrid, IMSA, EV, Formula E. World Championship, Formula E, Continental Championship, IMSA, national and regional championships, GT. Beyond that, the big question is, of course, why IMSA and why not WC? First things first, it's not cost. I've seen a lot written about IMSA is way cheaper than WC. No, it isn't. It fundamentally is not that cheap, that much cheaper. There is going to be a marginal difference. You've got the kind of freighting cost issue for the WC and its global presence, but with IMSA, you've got things that they need for IMSA you don't need for WC, which includes, a hauler fleet, which needs to be pretty much full-time staffed as well. That does not come cheaply. So the reality is, it was a straight choice between the 2 championships.
What I would say about the cost, though, before you go any further, is there is a significant difference in the cost specifically for the way that Porsche does it between GTP and hypercar, because in GTP, Porsche's operating out of Penske's building that already exists with staff members already funded by Penske, and the lights are already turned on anyway in that building. The Mannheim building operates on its own, it's built up from the ground, and it's all self-funded.
Yeah.
So it's a different way of funding the programme.
And by the way, if our sources are correct, that facility will close.
There certainly won't be anybody to walk in and turn the lights on, by my understanding.
Yeah, so that game is over, and that's another tragedy for our friends and colleagues in that part of the industry. So ultimately, it's come down to a choice. There are funding opportunities and sources in IMSA that are not available to the WC team, is the other part of this. And that's all to do with the way in which Porsche is managed and marketed in North America, as opposed to what happens across in other marketplaces. So that's what the choice is that's been made. Where does this leave us? Okay, so what do you want to do with that one?
The biggest question mark now is whether we see a 963 racing in the WC next year. Yeah, at all.
Right, so you were very busy on the phone the morning and we got this press release, which, again, not Porsche's finest hour in terms of the way that it released that information. But we'll leave that for another day. It's fair to say that in our understanding, the only 2 prospects for fielding a car in the FI World Endurance Championship, where Porsche must field 2 to qualify to be in hypercar, either as a privateer or as a manufacturer, under the current rules. The only prospect are Proton Competition and Penske. If Mannheim is closing, which our understanding is that it is, that removes the operating base. Penske don't tend to spend their own money on these things. Okay? This may be an extreme example of where there might be an ask, but I don't believe we're going to see a Penske run Porsche in the full season WC. I think this is all about whether or not a solution can be found to bring 2 cars from Proton to the field in 2026. Why is that critical? We'll come back to WC in a moment, because there aren't 2 cars on the grid. There is no third car coming from IMSA because it will effectively not be a current WC homologated car.
Yep. So that invitation, if assuming by the time this goes live, we'll almost certainly know the outcome of the championships in IMSA. Assuming Porsche Penske Motorsport wraps up the championship, they would get that automatic invitation if there's the opportunity to use it with the Porsche. It's Roger Penske's only chance of winning Le Mans next year.
So what that comes down to is, are there going to be conversations about trying to make that happen, and what would they need to involve? Well, number one, Proton do have 2 cars, albeit their car that should have raced this weekend at PLM is still under repair. They do have 2 cars. What they would require is effectively a cheaper way of running cars. There's an argument to say that the material that's available to do that is within Porsche's gift to give to them at little or no cost. That's one option. There's a significant... You've then got the staffing that comes with it. Remember, Proton already operates a factory-backed effort in LMGT3. Operating 4 cars is a very significant uplift for them, and their current customers at Ford would need to be reassured that that's not coming at the expense of their effort in LMGT3.
Also, you're a manufacturer-nominated team,
yes,
and it's a bit more than just running a privateer car, isn't it? In terms of your stature and what you're doing to represent Porsche, a rival brand to Ford.
So here's where we start getting into the easy bit. Hang on a minute, we've got all those parts stacked up there. You might as well give them to us rather than gathering dust there. It's not quite that simple, but that's the argument. That's the simple part, if you like.
Yeah.
The less simple part is the people. People cost money. It's one of the reasons why there'll be no people at Mannheim after Bahrain, because they're not going to be letting that place tick over with nothing to do. The drivers part of things. Are they going to be pay drivers? Are they going to be factory drivers? If they're factory drivers, they have to be paid. And then there's a third aspect to it, which is there are 2 entry fees in hypercar. There's the entry fee per race, per car, per team, which my recollection is a 5-figure sum. There's a 6-figure sum, and quite a beefy one, that needs to be paid by manufacturer to be an entrant in hypercar. My recollection last year is that was something over €500,000. Are Porsche, in pulling that programme, going to pay €500,000 for a team to represent them, having just announced they're pulling out of a factory programme? Or is Proton Competition and all their backers, if they're to make this happen, going to have to find that funding themselves? On top of the boost in costs with the raft of updates that are to come in 2026 for the cars, which is another 6-figure sum per car, on top of the actual operating cost in the first place. Yeah, this is not a simple give us a bag of free parts and we'll go away and be happy. This is a program that by any measure is an 8-figure program with significant additional 6-figure sums to be added into the 2025 budget. Even if they were running 1 car, let alone 2, they're going to need some help. What do we believe is going to happen? I think there are still conversations that need to be had. Those conversations need to be had between Proton, Porsche, WEC, FIA. Could an accommodation be made for them to field a single car? It could. Do I expect that accommodation would be made? No, I don't. I don't think they're going to want to open that door. I don't think they're going to want to offer the opportunity for anybody to get a free ride in this particular game. And I think there's a critical week or 10 days for that prospect. My firm expectation is that we are unlikely to see Porsche in the WEC in the hypercar class in 2026. I'd love to be proven wrong. And I know there are a number of people, I'm sure Chris Reed is one of them, they're working very hard to see whether or not they can salvage something from what is an almighty mess. Beyond that, the question is about LMGT3 and whether or not Porsche will be part of it. We know that Montai plan to post 2 entries for 2026, and I expect those entries to be accepted. I see no reason why they shouldn't be. There is no rule that says you have to have a hypercar program. Of course, they're keen on encouraging this. I hope we're dealing with wise and heads and steady hands with the rule makers that understand this is not the time to be, what's the right word here, stubborn about this. This is a real problem for Porsche. It's not unique to Porsche. This is a problem that bestrides the entire automotive world at the moment. Some companies more than others. Some companies have made, how can I put this, slightly less risky bets on the future of platforms for road cars. Some are in better position than Porsche are moving forward right now. But I hope smart decisions are made and that we don't get to the stage where hot heads close doors that don't need to be closed.
Yeah. The next question beyond that is, where do you sit right now in the debate about whether Porsche will be back in a few years' time, because at the moment they're disappointed with the way that BOP has been managed for whatever reason. They want the single platform, which could come down the line. They still want that 20th Le Mans win. Do you, and we've heard from Thomas Loudenbach speaking to the media earlier today about that very topic. You know, it's sort of, is this a goodbye forever for the 963? And his line is, never say never. You know, we don't necessarily assume that we'll never be back again or anything like that.
I think there's a sort of dream opportunity here for Thomas Loudenbach, and I'll say this right now for this podcast. I've been pretty disappointed by his tone through this year. I think he has been one of the more divisive figures in the paddock, you know, which, to my mind, is not a fair reflection of the quality of the background debate. I think he has played some political games with media around the way he's tried to game the way in which his team are being dealt with. I don't think they've had a bad crack of the whip in particular. I think there's a lot of nonsense spoken about the perfection of their Le Mans. They lost by seconds. They started from the back of the grid. They had a strategic issue in the middle of the night that cost them time. They could have won that race, and you know, I'd prefer that we were talking now about an epic finish at Le Mans rather than it being in some way unfair. It was an epic finish, you know, and I think there's ways and means in which, I'll tell you why I'm particularly disappointed to be talking about this around Thomas. I can remember Thomas giving us one of the defining interviews as the 963 program was born, where I remember his quote right now. I remember I was sitting in an Airbnb in Bahrain at the end of the season, and he said, we as manufacturers are going to have to wean ourselves off the chances of winning back-to-back Le Mans 3 times or back-to-back WCs 3 times. And yet every fibre of his comment this year has been that he's been a bit greedy to do exactly that. It's kind of that we are entitled to be, you know, in a position where we can win every weekend. You're not. You've got to earn it. And sometimes they've not done great. And I think that the way in which I would report their kind of performance card is, come and tell me about the performance when you've got 2 cars run by your team that are running nose to tail for 6 hours every weekend we race. And you're not doing that. Now that's either that you've got 2 completely unbalanced crews, which I don't really believe to be the case, or you're not running both cars well enough. It's balanced performance in particular. It's an absolute. You know, it's an absolute glass ceiling for the performance you can get. If you've got one car that's consistently running slower than the other car, that means something's wrong. that means that one's quite close to that glass ceiling, or closer to that glass ceiling, and one's way off. That's nothing to do with balance performance. And that, by the way, is why you didn't win a Manufacturers' World Championship, because you had one car scoring and the other one didn't.
I hope we see him back sooner rather than later, and I think there is a
Answer
chance.
the question, did I?
No,
sorry. I think the answer is yes. I do think we'll see them back. Why? Because it is the very fibre of Porsche's sporting existence to contest the very biggest races on the very biggest stages. And the one thing we've learned through this era, say what you like about it, but that stage is getting brighter and louder.
It's just going to be weird to me to come to a situation where it's June 2027 and basically all the world's key OEMs except Porsche are on that grid by that point.
That's their problem.
And they're going to have to
But
sit there and
problem.
watch it. Yeah, but it's very strange.
It is
very
strange.
And in a way, the other aspect to this is the GTP program does roll on. They are very bullish about saying, we're committed as a factory in GTP. We're going to do everything we can to win theirs. We expect to see updates to the 963 brought in next year. A new homologation for that after everyone goes through wind shear, the wind tunnel, before next season. It's a big win for IMSA to keep Porsche in there.
Oh, huge. I mean, but ask yourself the question, what if it had been the other way around? What would that have meant for IMSA?
It's a big hit.
Huge hit.
It's a much bigger hit to IMSA than it would have been to WEC.
Yeah. And, I'll give you the counterpoint. I don't disagree with a single word you've just said about it being a strange prospect. But look at it this way. This has happened because of market pressures and market performance for the core company. Nothing to do with the race team at all. Okay? Nothing to do with them. Their de facto replacement in maintaining the number of factory teams is Genesis, a young brand from South Korea coming in with huge ambition and coming in hot in both the luxury and increasingly the performance markets as well.
Yeah.
And who's to say that actually this isn't a defining point? Porsche have got to get this right. They've got to get the next stage of their strategy right, because it's brands like Genesis that are going to start to bite into their marketplace. That's the reality of it. In the price point you're talking about, whether or not it's a Cayenne, a Macan, even a 911 in the future. Okay, these are the brands that are going to be contesting the marketplace for Porsche, and in developing marketplaces, it's like China's a great example. I remember having a conversation with someone in the automotive trade. They said, no, you don't understand. In China, Porsche is an SUV manufacturer, not a sports car manufacturer. That's a reality. These markets are not as you and I expect them to be with a mature European or North American marketplace. This is something completely different. And what I hope is that Porsche haven't made the wrong move to save some tens of millions of euros and lose market share to a hungry new batch of Johnny-come-latelys, if you like, that come and nibble away at some very profitable markets. And by the way, we talked about, other hypercar manufacturers to come. Don't for a second think that the next batch won't be more of the same like Genesis.
I think the final element of this, bears talking about before we sign off on this show, is the Penske angle.
Yeah.
Because we are staring at a WEC in the next couple of years, which has more brands than ever before. We're in the hypercar class, certainly. Without Ganassi at the moment, without Penske now. Again, very... Penske not being in the WC and knowing, as I do, how desperate Roger Penske is to win Le Mans 24 Hours, and with Ford saying they're going to run their program internally, and with Genesis running their program internally for WC, and McLaren choosing United Autosports, at the moment there's no room at the inn for Penske anywhere.
No. That's it.
And this is the golden era that we know Roger really loves being a part of. And at the moment, he's got nowhere to go unless they fund their own program, which, as we've already said, is unlikely to be there.
It's a really interesting one. I mean, I'm trying to think if you were in the room at Daytona when there was the most astonishing press conference. It might have been when you were away for that period of time. And the most astonishing press conference had on the top table Roger Penske, Wayne Taylor, Michael Andretti, Bobby Rahal, Chip Ganassi. Who's left? Seriously.
Wayne Taylor.
It's remarkable.
Well, no, Penske's still there. But yeah. In IMSA. Yeah. It's... And the thing is, the Penske operation in WEC has been utterly superb. Like, the way they've run those cars.
Yeah,
and the same in IMSA.
When they've been on a tear, it's been so impressive. And, you know, we correctly focus on the driving talent because they've got a few epic talents in that team. But...
Well, that's another element to this, is the drivers. Where do they go?
Do they
stay or do they go?
Well, yeah. I think we're going to find out sooner rather than later. I can tell you right now...
There's movement in that market.
I can tell you right now...
It's coming.
That if if Porsche are under the impression that what they need to do is to offer a GT drive here or there and a platitude there or there else, the answer is that's not correct. And I can only tell you what the evidence of my own eyes showed me fairly recently, is there are lots of people waiting to see that. We knew this was likely to happen, okay? Lots of people waiting to see exactly what is going to be the response from Porsche to some of their, let's face it, supreme talents. This could make things very, very interesting in what is already a pretty highly charged silly season.
How many brands do you reckon they contacted Kevin Estre and Lawrence Vanthoor in the last 24 hours? Last week.
I don't think it's
last month.
I'd be surprised if there were very many that hadn't.
Yeah.
Is the honest answer. I'd be surprised if there's very many that hadn't.
There aren't a great deal of seats left.
I'll add this. I hope one of them was Porsche, because one of the things I've been disappointed by in the current era of Porsche is the... What's the right word here? Is the deterioration of the quality of career management at Porsche. The deterioration of it. That was always the bulletproof route for an aspiring young sports car driver to have a long, long career. And the last few years, I've witnessed, and in some cases spoken to, a catalogue of extremely talented drivers who don't feel as if that's been the case. And if you lose one or two of these guys, that's bigger than the sum of its parts.
Well, it's like when the Audi thing started to fall to pieces and gradually wind down, and you're seeing these names that have been there for decades, in some cases, move on. And it's like you look at the factory stable at Audi a couple of years ago when it was all getting to the end of the program for customer racing, and you're just like, wow. Just so strange to see a factory roster for a brand that's got so much heritage reduced down to like a few drivers in a GT car.
It's still to this day, it's weird when you see a Chris Meese not driving an Audi. It's weird, and it
took a long time to get used to the Vanthoors not being in Audis.
Yeah, but it's there's a moment now. Number one, I expect they'll be back. Will they see the opportunity that the new platform produces? I think they will. I don't think they'll be away for terribly, terribly long as their core business plan is the right one. And I think there'll be a bit of a get-out-of-jail-free card, because for me, 963 is a reasonably good car, but talking to people that have run them and operated them and driven them, it's not been the best LMDH.
No, but that's the thing. Penske have done a lot of bloody work to get to that point.
Yes, they have.
And
we remember the breakthrough race at Fuji 2 years ago, where from absolutely nowhere, all of a sudden was, where on earth did they unlock that? And that was all about the way in which they'd understood the setup, they'd understood the drivability of the car, the way the software had progressed, and all of a sudden that car came alive.
They're still hungry to win Le Mans. They're hungry to win World Championships, and they're very, very aware that the 963, they don't want it to become one of the very rare Porsches that hasn't won Le Mans.
I can say right now, I don't think the 963 ever will win Le Mans, and I think when they come back, it will not be with the 963. We'll see. Anyway,
We'll see.
Porsche, to all involved, we wish you well, both with IMSA and with those of you guys out there that won't be part of our motorsport family for the next year or so. We firmly wish you well. And
Well, the thing is, a lot of those people who are involved in, it's a horrible time for all the people involved in the PPM side. We're running the WEC program, but everyone who's coming to an end of their time with that program are going to be in demand.
You hope so.
There's programs coming.
Yep.
There's an outfit like Ford that's looking to build up a roster of talent from within. I would like to think all of them are in demand right now.
You'd have thought.
And there are programs to replace.
Yep, you'd have thought. They've just announced an in-house team. Where else would you look?
Dan says, I'd be just walking around, I'd be queuing up outside that garage.
But I'll say this out loud. If you're out there and you're part of this, you've had some bad news this week, our thoughts are with you, and if we can do anything to help, we will try to do so. You know where we are. For now, though, thanks for Stephen Kilbey and your time in recording this twice. It's quite late in the evening now, and my wife will be furious with me.
It was daylight when we started.
It was indeed. This has been the Week in Sports Cars. He's been Stephen Kilbey. I have been Graham Goodwin. With thanks again to the Justice Brothers and TorontoMotorsports.com. We hope to record next week, probably from Portimao for the European Le Mans Series finale and all sorts.
That'll be a boring weekend, won't it, Graham?
No, it won't. Oh my God, that's going to be a cracker.
Don't miss it.
Don't miss it. No, it's
it will be
great.
mayhem.
That's going to be Johnny Palmer's will bring you the action through the week. Remember, a Saturday race in Portimao. To allow us all to have a party on Saturday night with Johnny Palmer to disgrace himself as he usually does. God bless you, son. We'll be with you next week. For now, thanks for listening, and Twist will return.